Morning, everyone. This is Britt Simon. I was about to go live, and I realized I had a T-shirt on that has my employer's name, which I don't really care if anyone knows that. But it's not a good thing to do because you could be seen as representing their beliefs, etc. So you have to be a little bit careful in America about doing that. So I just quickly had to run and change T-shirt. Luckily, I'd done some laundry. So anyway, so excuse me panting. I just thought I'd come along and getting excited for 2023. Yes, I am. I'm excited for 2023. That's why I'm panting. But anyway, I thought I'd come online and just sort of do some question and answers. Happy Sunday to you from Journey, Rainer. And let's see. So Frank, good Lord. There's a very smart man in the building. Long time no see, indeed. I hope you're well, Frank. You're probably not too many miles away from me right now, but I hope everything's well with you. I don't know that people know that you are the Frank that provides the SEAC data. But anyway, very, very great deal of thanks from me to you, Frank, for all that you do. Between you and Zarthisius and the data that's put forward also by Save Diversity Visa, people are much more educated about the process today than they were a few years ago when people were in the dark. I think we had the SEAC data from 2014 originally. From the DV lotteries from maybe 2013 we had it, but it was around about that time that we had some of the data. But frankly, to get the data updates every day is tremendous benefit, really. So, much gratitude for that. I'm going to get a number of questions like this. I put a video out the other day using Frank and Zarthisius's data, basically adding up the number of visas issued already and the number of visas scheduled in August and September, or say number of interviews scheduled for the number of people that we know. And I was pointing out that KCC are around about 55,000 between those two numbers, right? Now, we know that there is a dropout rate, but nevertheless, I believe they've gone very close to allocating all of the visas, the 54,850, for interviews, right? That doesn't mean that they can reach 54,850 without sort of doing some AP cases and that sort of thing. But it does mean that they really shouldn't be, unless they're doing something radically different that we don't know about, they shouldn't be creating a 2NL for someone if there is not a visa for that case. Okay. Now, adjustment of status cases don't get an allocated visa, but consular processing cases do. And so there should be a cap, an absolute hard cap that they shouldn't be allowed to exceed of 54,850, because that's the number of visas available this year. You might be able to say, well, they could go into the NICARA allotment a little bit, which would allow them to go to 55,000. They did do that in previous years when the NICARA was an allocation of 5,000. I saw in a couple of years they exceeded the 50,000 limit. But the limit set by law is a hard limit of 55,000, even with NICARA. And so, they definitely can't promise people that they can give them an interview and go above 55,000. I mean, I just don't think they've got any ability to do that, right? So on the day that they're setting these interviews up, it's a very, I can't be 100% certain, but I think they are very, very close to that number. So this question, do you think there's going to be a 2NL for Casablanca? I believe, and I took Frank's data the other day to see all of the daily entries to see which embassies have accepted interviews. I believe Casablanca accepted interviews already. Literally, Frank, you're going to laugh, but I've got all of your pages open. I didn't take that data into a spreadsheet, but I could quickly sort of look through here. And anybody could do the same thing I'm doing here. I've opened all of the past dates, and on Frank's data, he has a section that says accepted cases by consular post. So one day we see 2NLs go out. The next day, or maybe a couple of days later, you'll see which cases accepted those cases. They were in transit and they then become ready. And Frank notes that and figures out where the 2NLs from a day or 2 days earlier, roughly, where those 2NLs went, right? And so on any given day, he then tracks that and he keeps that historical information on his website, right? So brilliant job, Frank. That's very helpful. I would love to see I'd love to see this data. I'd love to see some smart guy take this data and show us month to month when embassies accept the cases, how many cases, etc., and plot that onto a chart so you could look for patterns and you could look to confirm this sort of thing. But anyway, just as I was talking there, I just clicked through and I can see that on the 2nd of August, Casablanca accepted 245 cases for 357 people. So they've already accepted cases for September. Are they going to send some more? I think it's unlikely. Okay, now it doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means it's unlikely. Okay, so I'm not prepared to say that DV 2022 is over until September the 30th, right? I'm just talking about whether the window is closing or not. If your embassy has already accepted cases for September, it's probably not likely that they're going to take a second batch for September. Number one, because why didn't they tell KCC that they had that extra capacity before, right? And number two, we're very close to the point where all of the visas that could be issued are allocated. And so now what we're going to be working with is refusals from August and September, right? And they won't use those for new cases to be scheduled. They'll use those for closing AP cases, right? So, Brian, that was a long-winded way of saying, no, I don't think so. Funny scene, I would have done the same. That's with the T-shirt thing. Yeah, it was a funny scene. A big man running in and out of the room, not it is pretty funny. Okay, so from Prem, date of birth of birth certificate and passport is different. Will it be a problem going to the DV interview? Yeah, it will. Those two documents should be in sync, right? I many times get the question about education documents. The date of birth on my education document is not the same as my passport and my birth certificate. Well, that nobody cares about that because your date of birth is not established, by your education document. You may have made a mistake. The school that you went through education with may have made a mistake, in giving them the birth certificate. Not a big deal. But the birth certificate and the passport, those two things are official documents, and they should tie up with each other. If they don't, then frankly, I would question why. If I was the CO, I would say, okay, so are you giving me a false birth certificate or are you giving me a false passport? Because one of these documents has to be wrong, right? You got a birth certificate. Normally your birth certificate should tie with the passport. So I don't know how that's happened in your case, Prem, but I would say that it's probably because the processes in your country are kind of crappy. And maybe the passport needs to be fixed. And I would personally do that before filling out a DS-260. If you're a DV 2023 candidate, I would personally go and correct this before filling out the DS-260 so that those two documents at least tie. Because otherwise you're providing false documentation. One of those documents is false. They might both have been official, but they don't agree with each other. So one of them is wrong, okay? And that, in my mind, that's not a good thing. So yeah, I would say it's possible, quite likely, to be a problem in the interview. There are some countries where document standards are so bad that the COs are kind of used to this stuff. But nevertheless, in most places, this would be a problem in the interview, and I would personally correct it. Any update for good luck? Not specifically. There's appeals going through. Those appeals are going to be heard in September. We'll probably have answers to that in October, maybe November. We're not going to know immediately on the day of the appeals, what happens. But the government is appealing the ruling, and so we're just waiting for that to happen. So that's the same for all of the DV 2020 and DV 2021 cases. They're all dependent on these appeals. that are happening right now, and will be heard. The appeals will be heard in September. Okay. So they have rejected the DV 2021 cases couldn't be processed. No, I don't know specifically what you mean, Backer, but basically for DV 2020, everybody was included as a class under the class action of Gomez, right? Which is the case that Jesse Bless and others, are responsible for. That covered, in a sense, everybody, but only 9,095 visas were set aside. Then so you don't have to be a plaintiff of a DV 2020 case to benefit if we later win the appeal, right? There's a chance, but there are not enough visas for everyone, so everyone's got a chance, but nobody's got a guarantee in DV 2020. In DV 2021, there were a couple of lawsuits that were won. Go, Good Luck, Rye. There may be some others, some smaller cases. If you were not on the DV 2021 lawsuits, and you're not covered by Rye, which is a particular case I'll come back to in a minute, then your case is basically done. You have no further options. There's no opportunity for you. If you're on Go or Good Luck, some visas have been set aside, and that is what's being appealed. The government doesn't want to issue those cases, and we're saying, we want those cases issued. And so again, there are not enough visas set aside in those cases to cover everybody on those cases. But that's what we're going to try and argue. That I think the Go lawyers, the impact team, are arguing the way that the number was calculated as well. So so that there's a chance of people who are plaintiffs on those lawsuits to get lucky later, depending on the appeal. The Rye lawsuit actually achieved a class action, class certification for people that were in one of, I think it's 26 or 27 embassies, mainly European embassies. They were embassies or countries affected by the localized travel ban, the sort of Schengen area travel ban and that sort of thing. So if your case in DV 2021, if you're not a plaintiff, but your case was assigned to one of the Rye is spelled R-A-I, Rye embassies, then there was an order that protected, I think, about 906. I want to say 906, but I could be wrong on that, just from memory. It protected about 900 visas for issuance for anybody that was, whether they were a plaintiff or non-plaintiff, at those embassies, right? That were already at those embassies prior to the litigation being won at that point, right? So there are a few people who can be not a plaintiff but have a possibility of getting a visa if we win the lawsuits, if we win the appeal. But for most people in DV 2021, if you weren't a plaintiff of Go or Good Luck or some other case that I'm not aware of, then your chance is over. Okay. There's talk about legislation that would recover some of these years, etc. But until that legislation is actually law, to me, it's just rumor and doesn't mean anything. And speaking of which, what are your expectations about Congress and the main project? Is there a chance other than the issues for 2021? Okay, so Hamid, just to explain again, whilst there are two Meng amendments, Meng Amendment 1 and Meng Amendment 2. 2 relates to the people affected by the Muslim ban. Number 1 relates to people in DV lottery from those affected years, 2020 and 2021. None of it is law yet, right? So again, there's some well-meaning efforts, there's some well-meant efforts being made, but but until it's law, it's not real. Okay. 9,095, just talked about that. A month ago for DV 2022. Yeah, Luca, it's going to be kind of a crunch time. The government, funnily enough, have done an amazing job. People are going to hate me for saying it, right? There's lots of people sitting in Accra, for example, sitting in Abu Dhabi or sitting in Cairo, and who have been horribly mistreated. Lots of embassies have mistreated their local people, and it's been an unfair year. But at the same time, Luca, I think you probably would agree with me. At least the government for 2022 said, holy crap, we are screwing up people's lives here. We're going to do everything we possibly can centrally in KCC. We're going to do everything we possibly can, including tearing up the rule book on how we process cases, to try and get as many cases out there as possible. And this year, they are almost certainly, I don't see any way it's possible that they're not going to exceed 50,000 visas. They're probably going to exceed 52, 53,000. They're probably going to exceed that, right? And so that's incredible. That will be the most visas issued in any year that I've seen, going back to, I've got numbers going back to 2000, early 2000s, right? So this will turn out to be, in the KCC's mind, one of the best performances. A lot of unfairness, yes. So for a lot of individuals, not a good performance. But if you look at it from a global point of view, and you look at it from a pure numbers point of view, have they done the best they can do? Yeah, they have. That is absolutely the problem for the lawsuits right now in DV 2022. It's going to be very hard for the lawyers to go into actual court and say, they did a crappy job. Now, if I was a lawyer looking after 50 cases, I'd be less concerned because I'm more likely to be able to get those 50 cases through. If I'm a lawyer looking after 2,000 cases or 1,000 people who are still not scheduled, I'd be much more concerned, right? Or if I was one of those plaintiffs, I would be much more concerned because there just are not enough visas. No matter what argument you make, they're not going to issue 60,000 visas because you've got a lawsuit. You've got 2,000 people who are waiting for a visa. It's not going to happen, right? So, this is the difficulty. And Luca, I know I'm pretty sure you'll agree with everything I just said there, because you and I have had some very sensible conversations in the past about this. So, and for others, Luca is he's one of the people waiting for an earlier year. Okay, I-134, is it a must to go with at the embassy? I would say this: if you're a DV 2022 candidate with an August or September interview, and you don't do something to satisfy the public charge requirement, like bank statements or an I-134 or something, then you're a bloody idiot, because you're not going to get any time to fix this after the interview. There's not going to be any time left, right? So you are, to avoid being a bloody idiot, right? Make sure you do something, whether it's an I-134 or preparing financial documents that shows you've got at least $10,000 per person attending the interview. Do something that if the CEO turns around and says, I think you're going to become a public charge in the USA, and they won't be that explicit, but they're going to say things like, okay, what's your plans? How are you going to survive in the USA? Right? So you need to do something to show them that. And the safest way of doing that is to have an I-134. Next best thing is to have financial documents that shows you've got personal savings, not assets, savings, right? Cash at the bank, that sort of thing, for at least $10,000 per person. If you don't do that, and you turn up at your interview and you're asked that question, then you are put onto AP. And if you're put onto AP on the 20th of September, then you're screwed. It's as simple as that, right? There's not going to be enough time to go fix your problems. Okay, so don't put yourself in that position if you've got any intelligence at all, for all of you. Okay. Riyadh, is there still any chance? Again, Mazin, do what I did for a few moments ago for the Casablanca embassy. I'm not going to do it again for every question that is asked, but go to Frank's document, right? Frank's webpage. Open up every day. This is exactly what I've done. Open up every day from the 14th of August until now, right? and look at the accepted cases per embassy section and look to see if Riyadh has accepted 2NLs. If they have, then they've accepted them for September, and they're probably not going to accept any more. On the other hand, there may be some smaller embassies or some other embassies that may get some 2NLs on Monday or Tuesday of this week. It could happen. That doesn't mean if it happens, it doesn't mean my theory is dead in the water. It just means, there was a couple of embassies they were still working on, right? But I don't expect to see 1,000 2NLs coming out on Monday or Tuesday. I expect to see maybe 10s, 20s, a couple of hundred, maybe, right? And that would be about it. Okay. Okay, could I change the interview location after receiving the second notification letter? Because at the moment, not India visas are available in Kabul. Oh, man. Jesus. So you asked for your interview to be held in India. And because you're originally from the Kabul embassy, you have the right to ask for wherever you needed to be. But you asked to be sent to a country where you can't be allowed to enter. Man, I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm very sad for you. So theoretically, you can ask for a transfer. Your case has been sent to India. You can contact another embassy. For God's sake, make sure that you ask an embassy where you can travel to. All right. But let's say that was, I'm going down a path here which is technically accurate, but I know what the outcome is going to be. You could contact Pakistan, for example. Let's say you could enter Pakistan, Islamabad. You could contact them and say, will you accept my case? Because my case has been sent to India, right? And let's say they say yes. Then the technical way of doing that is that you get that email and you contact India and you say, India, please send that to Islamabad. And that's how it works, right? The problem is that Pakistan is probably not going to have many appointments left, right? They may give you one. I can't say they won't, but the reality is that there are not many appointments left, right? And so you're at risk now, and you're at risk because you chose to be sent to a country where you can't get in, which was your choice. And I'm frustrated that you made that choice. But anyway, that's what you can do. You can try and see what happens. Okay. Good luck with that, Shams. I hope you get that sorted out. Do what you can. Sarah B, happy Sunday. OC 1300. When can we roughly expect the interview for DV 2023? So OC 1300 probably won't be current until about, let's just guessing, probably February, March, April, that sort of time, right? In next year. And so no matter what's happened, no matter how quickly you sent off your DS-260, etc., you won't be interviewed until your case number is current. And so it's going to be about that time, roughly. You can think about that time. But we won't know exactly what time it will be because we don't know the full range of the numbers. And the visa bulletin progression will control this. I do expect them to control next year, DV 2023, via the visa bulletin better than they did this year and previous couple of years. By putting things current, they caused a bunch of chaos, right? By making every country current, they caused a lot of chaos and a lot of pain. They gave the impression to a lot of people that they could satisfy all these cases. I told people over and over again that's not the case, but nevertheless, some people ignored what I was saying and assumed that because they were current, they were going to get an interview, and that's not the case. There's going to be at least 20,000 people, actually 20,000 cases, so 40,000 people who are going to miss out, right, in DV 2022. And I'm basing that on official numbers from KCC, right? So for you, though, you'll have to wait for the visa bulletin to go through and just see how that goes, okay? But probably, it's not going to be October, November, December. It's not going to be as early as that. It's going to be in the what I would call the spring of next year. You probably, you still call it spring, but it's just different down under, right? What's the topic of today's live? It's just an old guy rambling. I'm sorry. I should have a clear topic and I should stick on that topic. But I just take questions and I answer the questions. I don't look at the questions and decide, or I don't ask for questions of a particular topic. I just answer them. Right. That's the topic. Hi, Britt. I changed my case to Accra, but wrote KCC again to change it to Bishkek. My original post for interview, DV 2020. Oh my God. So you're a DV 2022 and you asked to change your case to Accra, probably the worst embassy in the world right now. Okay. Well, it's not going to work out well for you, I'm afraid, Adiak, because we're almost at the end of the year. Accra have accepted 39 cases, I believe, for September interviews, about 75 people or something. And I was horrified to see that in one way. I was glad for those 39 cases, but really, that's all you're going to do. Accra Embassy, 39 cases, that's all you're going to do in the final month of the year. They could have done more, but nevertheless, that's what they've taken. I don't think they're going to take any more. And unfortunately, once you get into the AV queue, for an embassy, you're sort of stuck there. They don't. They don't. They're not willing. KCC are not willing to change cases from one embassy's AV queue to another embassy's AV queue. They don't want to do that. There's no real reason why they shouldn't do that, but they don't want to do it. So they don't cooperate. So yeah, I'm afraid, Adiak, you're probably going to watch your chances disappear over the next few weeks. Okay, please say something about the cases sent to AP because of going to Iran. Okay, Iran is a country, and the whole Middle East, frankly, is a country where the United States has got terrorism concerns. Some of it's justified. Some people now from Iran right now are running around their lounges screaming, that they want that Simon's an idiot, right? And but this, I'm just trying to explain to people what the American mindset is, right? So if you've got travel history in the Middle East and particularly to Iran, then there is an increased chance of AP. If you come from Iran, there's certainly an increased chance of AP, right? That's just the reality. It's not my rules. I'm not causing this. I'm just talking about it, right? Is that justified? Well, it's been going on for years and years and years. There were a lot of changes put in place after 2001, the 9/11 attack. And America became very cautious about some things and developed lots of security capabilities, some of which we're still in the dark about. We don't know everything that they do. But Iran in particular has a policy of not cooperating with the USA and runs around shouting things like death to Americans and death to the USA and sending attack boats to mess with our warships, all sorts of things, right? And even where they can, capturing some of our servicemen, right? So there is not a good relationship between Iran and America, and there's no cooperation. And America is concerned that a country that is against them like that might send people through programs like the DV lottery process to come into our country and cause further chaos. Frankly, that last bit is idiotic. To actually go through a whole DV process to become a terrorist in the USA, for example, is the last thing on a terrorist mind. Oh yeah, I'm a terrorist. I want to go and kill Americans. So I'm going to go through a 1.5 year process, which is really painful to go through, expensive. I'm not going to just go there on a visitor's visa. I'm going to go through an immigration process. I mean, come on, America. That clearly isn't what they're doing. But nevertheless, this mindset, includes immigration cases. So the fact that perhaps you're not from Iran, but you travel to Iran, just increases the possibility in an American security mindset saying, okay, what was that person doing there? So they will increase the number of background checks that they do because of your travel history. The same thing can be said of some professions, work history. If you're in biochemical warfare, but you've never been to the Middle East, you could expect some additional, period of security checking, right? To an extent, it's common sense. To some extent, it's not common sense. There's an aspect of it that goes too far in my mind. But nevertheless, that's what they do. Okay. The I-134 can be emailed to you. It doesn't have to be the original wet signature anymore. It did used to be some years ago, but they changed that some years ago. So it can just be a emailed copy. So the sponsor should fill that form out. They probably live in America, right? Because you're supposed to get an American resident to fill that out for you. They'll email that to you with some supporting information, which would be the 1040, the W-2, pay slips, and photo ID. So you then print out those things. You've got copies of everything, and you take those to the interview. And you only present the I-134 if the CO asks for it, right? Very often they won't ask for it, but it's smart to have it with you. Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can find some more here. DV 2023 AS 20,500 from Afghanistan. Interview location Islamabad. Submitted DS 260. What do I think of an interview for Afghans? Will it be normal? Okay, so whenever someone says, what will it be like for Afghans? What will it be like for Iranians? What will it be like for French people? I tend to ignore that last bit because, it's not a question of what it's like for people from your country. It's not about Afghans. It's about people, right? Now, your number will probably not be current until about almost a year from now. Okay, so you're going to have a long wait. During that time, we're going to find out more, and we'll find out maybe that your case number is, maybe it will be interviewed faster than I think today. Maybe it'll be slower than I think today. Maybe it even could be too high to be interviewed at all. Okay, you're just going to have to wait and see what happens, and you'll know more information later. But you've got a long time to wait. So, and during that time, conditions at Islamabad could change for the better or for the worse. We don't know, and so it's too early to predict what will life be like in a year from now. Okay. Okay, 2022. I'm in the USA right now. Got my social security already, but I haven't received the green card yet. Can I travel back to my home country with my visa issued in the passport? Yes, Scaramanga, you can. When you entered the USA, congratulations, by the way, welcome to the USA. When you entered, your DV visa is stamped, it's endorsed, and it says, and it becomes the evidence of your status, your LPR, lawful permanent resident, LPR, your LPR status for the first year, right? And so you can now leave the country. You don't have to have your physical plastic green card. When you return, you'll show your passport with that visa stamped in it, right? And the fact that it's endorsed is evidence that you're an LPR. Okay, so yes, you can do that. What does the status ready mean? Is there a possibility of not being scheduled while your status is ready? Ready means you've been scheduled. So no, there is not a possibility of not being scheduled. If your case says ready, that means it's been scheduled. You should know your interview day. Your interview day, date, time, etc., will be on the ESC page. Okay, so go ahead and look for that. High school educational certificate not available, but I have the results slip. Would that affect me, please? Prepare as well as you can for your interview. That means getting every document you can. If necessary, contact your school or the education board in your area or whoever is the authority and see if you can get documents that help prove it. Now, do the best you can to get as much documentation as you can to prove your education. But at the end of the day, it probably won't be a problem as long as the CO believes that you went to school and passed some level, with the results slip that you passed your education. But it depends on the education in your country. It depends on what you did next. Did you go to university? It depends on your individual case. But the general answer to that would be prepare as well as you can, right? For DV 2023, is the pilot procedure or the document procedure, is it in place? So up to now, with the exception of one case that I'll talk about in a minute, nobody that I have known of has been asked for documents proactively. The KCC have not reached out to anyone and said, okay, we've processed your DS-260, now please send these documents, and they give you a letter, right? There is one person that I know of that wrote to KCC and said, okay, do you want my documents now? And in response to that, KCC bizarrely sent out the documents request letter. And I can only assume that that was a mistake, frankly. It's not common. It's not, no one else has got that letter, right? And it's not that I'm in touch with every single DV 2023 candidate, but I'm in touch with enough people that I would know by now if they were actually asking for documents, right? And they're not. So this one case was kind of bizarre, and I think it was a mistake made by someone at KCC who got perhaps an inexperienced staff member. They got an email saying, should I send in documents? And they're like, documents? Okay, I'll look that up. And they look up some sort of knowledge-based system, and the knowledge-based system says, yeah, send this letter. Well, the knowledge-based system is based on the old process, right? So I don't think that's a correct thing. I don't think anybody so far has been asked for documents, and I don't think they will be. Therefore, that to me says that the pilot program is continuing, and that includes the embassy-specific queues, the method of processing, etc. The importance of what things are important, etc. in terms of scheduling priority and all of that sort of thing. But most importantly, what it also includes is by not doing the document procedure and by only focusing on DS-260 processing, it means that they have enough time to process all the cases and that we won't have a backlog by about December of this year. Okay, so people are panicking. 2022 people will tell everybody who's prepared to listen that the day you send your DS-260 really matters and all that sort of thing, and that's not true. It's never been true. But that's the impression people got from the broken system that was DV 2022, right? The day you're put into an AV queue matters. That's the day you're processed, essentially. And your case number matters in DV 2022. But nobody can point to any example of any date where everybody who submitted their DS-260 on May the 9th or May the 10th or May the 11th, any date where everybody on that date has been scheduled. That's not true. Therefore, the statement that the DS-260 submission date is the date that causes your prioritization is obviously bullshit. And I don't understand why people can't understand that point. It's not the day you submit your DS-260, it's the day your DS-260 is processed. And under the pilot program, it's the day that your case is put into the AV queue. That's important. And your case number is important because that queue is allegedly, and we're about to hear some information from Jesse on this later today. He and I may have a conversation on this later today. But the case number, they've suggested the case number was most important. Then they went back and said, no, AV status date is most important. And also region alphabetically is important, which was bizarre. Anyway, the upshot of that for DV 2023 is if all the DS-260s are processed by December, then everybody is going to simply be waiting for their case number to become current. And KCC will have given the visa office proper numbers this year on how many cases are the demand, and therefore the whole visa bulletin process will work again correctly, and the whole thing will be processed and prioritized by case number. The whole thing will be different. Okay, so if the pilot program is in place, we're going to see a much more organized DV 2023 than DV 2022 was, even though DV 2022 was managed well in terms of the numbers of visas that they put out. Right now, there are going to be some concerns still with individual embassies, but that's another story, right? Okay, sorry for the long-winded answer, but I thought it was important to just cover that one completely. Aliou Kabia in the USA, got your SSN and your green card. Fantastic, congratulations. I am working on some scripts for some videos that I need to prepare about how you choose where to live, how you find a job, how you find, or when should you buy a house, how do you buy a house, why should you buy a house, all these sort of questions. How do you get a driving license? How do you buy a car? What jobs are good jobs in the USA? All of these questions need to be answered. I totally get that I've got a responsibility to produce that sort of information for people. I really want to do it. It's just very time consuming, and so I need the time to be able to work on that. But I've got about a week or so left, being on my own before my wife comes back from Spain. So I have a little bit of spare time. So I'm trying to work on those things now. Another one got here fine. Helped me a lot and succeeded. Fantastic. Lots of happy people at the moment, and a few unhappy people. I'm doing good today, thank you, Moses. Go 21. Do you think the case in the DV cases can end in front of the Supreme Court if we win again in appeal? At one point, I'd have laughed this question out, out of hand, but I don't know. I think Jesse actually thinks that this could go to the Supreme Court. So that's a question for the Supreme Court ultimately, right? What that really means is, if the appeal is lost by the government this time, what do they then do? They can continue to increase the level of their appeal and take it to a higher and higher court. At some point, the Supreme Court could say, actually, no, we're not going to take that case. We're referring that back down to what the lower court said, which means that the appeal that the government lost at that point, the loss stays, and that's it. That's the final decision, right? So, but would they ask for this to go all the way up to the Supreme Court? Yeah, they probably could. Would the Supreme Court take it? I don't know. That's another question. We'd have to see. But yeah, we'll see. There are two principles that they're fighting in these DV cases. It's not because they're anti-immigrant. That sort of rhetoric is bullshit. It's nonsense. It's not because Biden wakes up in the morning and decides he's going to screw DV lottery winners. That's not. I mean, I know some of the lawyers say these sort of things, but it's not true, right? The reality is, the government are appealing these cases because there's a couple of important precedents being set by these things that really bother them, right? One of those is that the president loses a little bit of power by these decisions, right? And they don't want to create that precedent. And number two, the fiscal year is important to the government. They like this resetting every fiscal year. They don't like the idea that you can reserve visas from one year and carry them over to the next. They are fighting that principle, right? That's why they're fighting. They're not fighting because they don't want Johnny from Africa to come. That's just bullshit. It's rhetoric that the lawyers sometimes, some of them anyway, come up with, and it's not true. Yes, there are some racists in the government, but the government as a whole is not a racist organization. This one, anyway. Perhaps previous ones were. We'll see. All right. Our interview is scheduled for next week. Do we need to bring birth certificates for our adult children? They're over 21, so they won't be accompanying us. The birth certificates for your adult children, how much would they weigh? Not very much. So carry them with you, just in case, right? You don't need to ask questions about, what extra papers do you need to take to the interview. Just take them. If you think it might be interesting, it might be advantageous, just take them. Okay. I don't think for 1 minute anyone's going to ask for them, but if you have them in your bag, that won't be a lot of extra paperwork, and it might be useful. Who knows, right? Are we going to see the uneven distribution of visas if and when 2021 and 2020 start rolling? Yeah, it's always an uneven distribution of visas. I don't know what your question means, really, to be honest. Okay, covered that one. Let's see this one. In the application, I made a mistake between my picture and my wife's picture, switching between them. Will this cause become refused on the day of the interview? Yes, it quite likely will. I've seen cases like this before where someone has basically done what you did, or they took their own photo and they put it in the wife's photo. I mean, and that will often cause disqualification. No, it's not 100% certain. So if you've got the money and you want to take the risk and you want to take your chances to be interviewed, you can do that. But that is a significant violation of the process, and it's the sort of thing that will get a refusal. I would say more often than not 100% of the time, but probably more than 50% of the time, it'll be refused. Okay, and there's no way to fix it, by the way. If that's what you did in your original entry, we're not talking about the DS260, right? No, we're talking about the original entry. If that's what you did in the original entry, yes, that can get you disqualified. That's a big deal because your photo wasn't right. Okay. Okay. Mumby Fitness. How are you, like? Thank you for the information you've been sharing. Just received the visas. Will be coming any time from now. Good luck to you when you come. Good time to come, but it's very hot in most of the states right now. 22 AS 13,000, still waiting for the 2NL for Ankara. Do you think this delay is because we submitted the DS260 late in July, or maybe there were 5 people in the case? Look, 40,000 people are not being scheduled in this year. There's a lot of people not being scheduled. So don't blame yourself because you've got 5 people in your family. Don't blame yourself because you submitted late in July of 2021. I don't think that's the reason at all. The reality is your case number wasn't the highest, right? There's a lot of people before you. I don't know what it was about your case, but maybe your processing took longer on your case than other cases. I don't know. It's just one of those things, but don't, you won't ever know. I will never be able to tell you. Nobody will ever be able to tell you the precise reason why your case wasn't scheduled. It's just frustrating. Okay. I've answered this one, even though this is in Spanish. Yep. I think it's going to be October, November before we know anything about the 2020 cases. Okay. I've won 2023 and didn't finish grade because I finished off GR11 this year. So what is my solution? Okay. Hussein, I don't know your country. I don't know the education system or the requirements in your country. You need to investigate that. A difficult CO can ask for high school education or secondary, actually. They ask for secondary education results. And they're looking for a formal course of education comparable to an American education for the same thing. That wording comes from the FAM guide. And so they're looking for this formal course of education. If you go through education, but you fail the high school, let's say, and then years later you take some sort of makeup test, that, strictly speaking, doesn't qualify you, right? In almost any country, it shouldn't qualify you because that same process in America wouldn't qualify you, right? So maybe you went on to later education and you went to college or university or something. Maybe that would help. But if not, then look carefully at your work experience and say, okay, are you in a job that the job itself normally requires 2 years of experience or education to perform that job? Have you done that job for at least 2 years out of the last 5 years? All right. Now, if so, and go through, there's a blog post I have, which is it's titled, it's on BritSimonSays.com, and it's titled Work Experience or Education or something, how to qualify for the DV lottery. So, look at your work experience and consider that as well, okay? And have an alternative plan if your education is somewhat suspect in terms of how you finished it, okay? Earlier sponsor was green card holder, and now he became a system, and they've moved from early address. No, don't unlock that. You can correct. So the fact that he moved is no problem at all. It doesn't make any difference. But if that's the address you've given for the US address, that's where your green card will be sent. And so you can update that address, and you should update that address at the interview. No need to unlock for that, but you can do it at the interview. Okay. Is Sputnik Light accepted for the? Is Sputnik Light? What the hell, Sputnik Light? Is that a COVID vaccine? Study in Russia that's the only vaccine available for foreigners. My interview is supposed to be in Lebanon, and the vaccine is a bit worrying me. Okay. I mean, personally, I would go and get a booster in Lebanon when you go for the, when you go for the interview. That's the first thing I would do. But since you're interviewing in Lebanon, you're going to be attending a medical in Lebanon, and if your physician at the medical decides that your previous vaccine was not enough, then they will administer or arrange to administer the vaccine. So you don't really have a problem, right? I assume that the vaccine is available in Lebanon. And basically, the physicians can do whatever is medically appropriate for the location where they're at, right? So if let's say, and I don't know this to be the case, I'm just making an example. Let's say you go to that interview in the medical in Lebanon, but the vaccine is not available in the Lebanon either, and Sputnik Light is not considered to be a valid vaccine. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But the physician could say, well, the vaccine is not available locally, and therefore I'm not going to require it of people in this area, right? So they could say that, and they can still pass your medical. So basically, you don't need to worry about this. That's a long-winded way of saying, don't worry about it. Just go to the medical, and it will be sorted out. But if you're in Lebanon and they've got the vaccine available, go have a jab. Why not? Get lots of jabs. I've had 4, and frankly, I think the jabs have probably saved my life because I'm. You may not have noticed, but I'm not exactly the world's most in-condition person. And if I'd have got COVID at any time in the last 2 or 3 years, I think it probably would have been very bad for me. But the vaccinations have saved me from that problem. I have never had COVID, right? Even though my wife and daughter had COVID while I was here in the house, and we didn't do anything in terms of social distancing in the house or nothing. I just didn't get it because I was vaccinated up the wazoo, right? So just go and get the vaccinations. Okay. Question here about Infinity Exists. You're asking, is $20K US dollar, is it better than an affidavit of support? The affidavit of support letter, the I-134, is always the best way of meeting this requirement, but 20,000 USD for a single person is probably enough. Okay. The reason I put it that way is that the amount of money needed for savings is not defined anywhere, and so it comes down to the consular officer to make a decision about whether he thinks your $20,000 is enough or not. And if he comes from California, where $20,000 wouldn't last 5 minutes, he's going to have a different perspective of what that money means than if you go to Missouri, right? Where $20,000 will be you could buy a house almost for that. I'm bad. I'm naughty. It's not that cheap. But anyway, the point being, the I-134 has a mathematical formula applied to it, and so you can be certain of it being accepted, as opposed to the US dollar, savings, 20K or whatever. That's subjective. That's up to the CO, and so that's why the I-134 is always better. Okay. This one's a difficult question. It's not, well, it's a difficult solution. So, Anne, your husband, let's just assume you're asking for yourself. Your husband is in the USA as an asylum seeker, and the wife is back home, and the wife is the winner of DV. Okay. Now, because you're the winner, you have to interview as a consular processing basis. and there is no automatic ability to do an I-824, which is a follow to join case of someone who's in the USA, right? So what's going to happen is you'll do your appointment in your home country, you'll get your visa, etc., and then you can go and join your husband in the USA, and you can sponsor him through family-based sponsorship. However, he must never have been out of status. That's important, right? And so he can then adjust status in the USA once you have your status, and that will give him an ability to go through. It takes a long time, but it could work that way. The other way that he can do it is by joining you at the embassy appointment. But of course, by doing that, he's going to leave the USA, which means he abandons his asylum case. And he may, depending on your situation, it may be difficult for him to actually be in the country where your interview is being held. So, I appreciate that the second option is harder than the first. The first is not easy either. There is no easy solution in your scenario. This is a loaded question. Do you think Morrison is going to win the UAO versus Biden lawsuit? What's your expectations? I kind of touched on this earlier. It doesn't matter at some point. If all the visas are gone, they're all gone, right? So the question is when, not if, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the UAO versus Biden lawsuit is won. The question is when. And unless it's won very, very quickly, like in the next few days, literally things are happening fast enough to actually make it irrelevant, right? If all the visas are accounted for, then that's going to be it. Now, Curtis is going to hate that I'm saying that. He's pissed off with me at the moment for various reasons anyway. But so I'll piss him off a bit more. It doesn't really matter. But that's a reality, right? His lawsuit is not going fast enough in order to take advantage of the visas out there. He's got over 1,000 cases, over 2,000 people still not scheduled on his case. And so he needs, even if he wins, and he gets a win for every one of them, he needs an allocation of 2,000 visas. And they're all going to be gone. And they're going to be gone mostly to cases already scheduled. And then the government's going to say, well, hang on a minute. Are we really going to say that we're going to schedule a bunch of new cases now because Curtis won the lawsuit, and we're going to deny those visas from people clearing out of AP when there's 7,000 people on AP right now that hope to clear their cases before the end of September? Are we going to deny all of those cases because Curtis Morrison's plaintiffs are going to take them all? That's going to be a difficult decision. And I think, honestly, the timing question is a bigger deal for Curtis right now. Jesse, in his lawsuit, for example, has got all but the last few cases of his have been served, right? All of his Preston cases, which was the Sydney case, all of them got their visas, right? Well, they got their interviews at least. I mean, they may have had some denials, but they all got their visas or interviews. In the Husu case, the other case of his, he's been held. He's got a few people in Accra and I think Cadiz, two horrible embassies that are just holding people back. He's fighting hard for those, but we're talking about less than 20 people, right? So it's much easier to make Jesse Bless and his case go away than it is for Curtis. You see what I mean? That's the problem with these large lawsuits that Curtis seems to like. There's a lot of people, a lot of money for sure, but it becomes much more difficult to handle that. And it was only a few weeks ago, Curtis was saying things like they won't issue more than 30,000 visas this year. Curtis seemed entirely unaware of what was actually happening and the momentum that was going. And he genuinely, I think, believed that we were going to, have only 30,000 visas issued this year. And that was literally a few weeks ago he said that. So just recently, he seems to have cottoned on to the fact that there's a lot of visas being issued and a lot of visas being scheduled. 25,000 people have been scheduled in August and September. And the penny seems to have dropped just recently. He finally understands that. But what's he going to do, right? Even if he wins, if all the visas are gone, okay, that's the problem. So good question. And as I say, I'm certain Curtis, if he hears this, he's going to be annoyed even more at me at the moment. But Curtis and I, we have kind of a love-hate relationship. I love him, but he hates me at times. So there you go. Hi, Britt. I'm in Ghana. Is it too late to email KCC to unlock my DS260 and change my interview location? You got to give me your case number with the year and all that. I literally can't answer that question. Is it too late? I don't know. I don't know which year you're in. Don't know what your case number is. On the go. Without a high school degree, but having a bachelor degree, eligible for DV lottery under education. A bit risky. Normally it would be okay. The majority of times the CO is going to look at that and say, okay, your bachelor's degree, that's good, that's enough, right? But sometimes, just sometimes, they look at your earlier education path and they want to see the formal course of education that got you to the point of entry into the bachelor program. But normally it would be okay. How can I check to see if my refused case is finally denied? Go on to SEAC and check the status of your case. It'll say refused, but the description under refused, there's two versions of that description. One is AP, and it says something about if the consular officer has asked you for papers, make sure you do that. I can't remember what it says, but it's obvious that that's about AP. And the other is a final refusal. Final refusal has a very short description under there, and it's like 3 or 4 lines at most, and that can't be overcome. That's a final refusal. Okay. Okay, Joburg, DS5535. Yeah, Joburg are getting a lot of these DS5535s, which again seems like a mystery for certain lawyers around here. Hi, Simon. Been in AP because of this for 66 days now. Not sure if mandamus lawsuit is even worth the attempt. So torn on how to proceed. Joburg did so well to get everyone interviewed after a full start. Yeah. Many of us find ourselves stuck in this unfortunate situation of being stuck in AP. Visas are running low. You're right in everything you say there. It's unfair. It sucks. I'm surprised Joburg did it. Frankly, there was no real reason for Joburg particularly to single out its candidates for this DS5535 treatment. It's frustrating. Now, there have been some attempts to try and predict the length of time that the DS5535s take to be processed in normal cases. Now, this is not covering cases with Middle East travel history, Iranian cases, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, you're at the point, 66 days, you're at the point roughly about 10 weeks, where most of those cases, DS5535, are being resolved around about that time. 8 to 12 weeks seems to be about the maximum period of time that most cases go through for that processing. So you could start a mandamus case. It would be expensive, probably $10,000. And it would probably, it wouldn't make your chances any less, but you'll probably get your DS5535 processed anyway, with or without the mandamus case. If you want to actually throw some money at the problem and you're prepared to do anything you can possibly do to improve your chances, and $10,000 isn't a lot of money to you, then go ahead and do a mandamus case. It can't hurt. But the reality is, you've probably just got to be a little bit more patient. The only other flip side of a mandamus case is that you will need a visa being reallocated to your case now, and a mandamus case can't force that, right? That it might make it a little bit better, but it can't force it. So there's no guarantee from the mandamus case. So your choice. I'm I'm surprised and I'm sad that so many people are going through DS5535. So best of luck to you. Okay, I'm going to look for some other interesting questions. Let's see. Raffaella. A friend of mine made a mistake with the entry. Mistakenly, he put the marital status single. How do you make that mistake? I mean, oh God, I'm reading the next bit. And while filling DS, he put himself and the family spouse with 2 children. Now he's 2 in September. What do you suggest? Is it going to be direct reject or any chance of approval? Should he go or not because he's hesitating? What's he hesitating about? He's screwed. 100% certain he's screwed. First of all, I don't believe that you can just by mistake forget that you've got a wife and 2 children. I'm sorry, but that's just bullshit. Okay. In the original DV entry, he put that he was single. He wasn't. He didn't include his wife. He didn't include his 2 kids. I mean, it was a stupid thing to even file his DS260. But when he filed his DS260, he gave them all the evidence they needed to know that he'd lied in the DV lottery entry. Okay, he gave them the details of the wife and the 2 kids that he'd conveniently forgot before. And so there is 100% certainty of disqualification. There is no possible way he gets that. So unless your friend is a complete idiot, he won't attend the interview. And he can, and I mean, if he wants to waste his money, he's welcome to. But he's not getting he's not getting the visas. There's no way in hell he's getting the visas. So which, by the way, is a good thing for somebody else that followed all the rules, and they're now going to get the visas that your friend is wasting. All right, so there you go. U.S. Embassy in Islamabad is doing bad to the AF region. Yeah, I understand there's 4 cases. I keep getting told on a Telegram channel that there's 4 AF cases waiting for interviews at Islamabad. I don't know why they haven't scheduled them. It's complete mystery to me. They should have been scheduled. It's nuts. They just didn't do it. Oh, and I bet it's you. It's MMA. I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of the person that keeps smacking me about the head. But yeah, you're telling me again 4 AF cases. So yes, I'm well aware of the 4 AF cases. I don't know why they weren't scheduled. I don't know what's going to happen. I suspect they're not going to get scheduled. That's what I think is going to happen. But good luck. I hope that doesn't happen. Adis not scheduled DV case after September 15th. Can it be normal for not scheduling? Are you saying that on the 15th, Adis got some schedule? I can check that with my super duper frank data. Was it the 15th they got cases? Mm-hmm. You're saying that was on the 15th? I'm not. Oh, I see. Addis, yeah. So Addis Ababa, yeah, they accepted 93 cases. No, I'm looking in the wrong place. Stupid Simon. That's the 14th, 15th. No 2NLs. Okay. On the 18th, they accepted 169 cases. Generally speaking, the embassies are accepting cases 1 time a month, typically. There have been cases where they've had a second batch, but generally speaking, 1 large batch a month. And on the 18th of July, it was reported that they had accepted 169 cases in Addis for Africa region. So that's probably it. That's probably the last batch of visas that that interviews they're going to accept for September. Can I be 100% sure of that? No, I can't be 100% sure, but I'm fairly sure that that's the case. Okay. Thank you for the query. Your case number is now current for interview processing, is now ready for schedule. It means what? It means you've been added to an AV queue. I've talked about this embassy on previous videos, and perhaps you go and look at some of those videos. But there is a queue established for every embassy, maintained by KCC, where KCC have like a filing cabinet drawer of all the cases that they are lining up ready for interview at the embassies. The day that you're put into that filing cabinet drawer is important, and your case number is important. Okay, so that and I think Jesse has information now that suggests more strongly that it's about the day you're put into that drawer. But to be honest with you, none of the answers we've heard from the government so far have been good. And so I'm interested to hear what Jesse's got to say about that. But anyway, it means that you're lined up for interview. It does not mean that you're going to get an interview, because if there's 1,000 people in the filing cabinet drawer, and the embassy only accepts 30 cases a month, and there's only 1 month left, then 970 cases are not going to get seen. That's what that's the vicious reality there. Okay. Any expectation what the first DV 2023 DV bulletin will look like? 5K, 8K, 2.5K. Okay. Firstly, when we're talking about numbers, they're regional, right? The regions all have their number. So 5K in Africa is not the same as 5K in Asia or in Oceania, for example, right? So there's going to be a number for each of the regions separately. What would it start out as? I don't know. I think fairly low. No big reason to panic. The first VB out of 12 VBs, if they publish a low number or a high number, honestly, people get very worked up and excited, and there'll be all sorts of incorrect assumptions made about whatever number they put out there. There'll be people who take that number, multiply by 12, and say, that's my prediction, that's what they're going to finish at. It doesn't work like that. None of it works like that. So at least for the first 2 or 3 months, just ignore the general progression of the VB. It doesn't mean a lot. And the numbers will be by region. Okay. So there you go. Okay, let me find a couple more questions and we'll call it a day. Newborn, always like baby questions. Should I ask Casey to unlock my husband's DS260? Damn it, you don't tell me which year and what your region and case number is. It really helps if you can do that, right? I'm going to assume that you're a DV 2023 case. If you've had a baby, then yes, you absolutely need to unlock your DS260 and add the baby. You need to create a DS260 for the baby. And if you're a DV 2023 case, you need to do that as soon as possible, right? You don't wait. Now, there's a lot of bullshit that's been put around by various people saying unlocking is bad, and they're wrong, okay? They were wrong for DV 2022 and every other DV. Unlocking, there's many cases where unlocking didn't affect anybody's chances at all. However, it's far worse to not add your baby to your case and to try and leave that until the last minute. And if you're in DV 2023, it's not even a question, right? Just go and add the kid to your case, please. Just do the sensible thing. Just ignore all these other people. They don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so go and if you're DV 2023, yes, you unlock your case. You add your child, your newborn child, to your case, your spouse's case, and you create a DS260 for that child by using the Add Applicant button. Okay. Is it okay to email KCC to ask about the status of the case? Will it affect the case or harm in any way? No, it never harms. Obviously, as long as you don't say something stupid to KCC, something illegal, like I'm going to kill you if you don't give me I'm going to blow your office up if you don't give me an interview. If you say something like that, you can expect a knock on your door. But as long as you're just politely asking, no, there's no harm in that. Oh, there's a second question from Miriam. Because of the newborn, can I ask KCC to allow my husband to enter the US first to rent an apartment after a month or so, and my child plan to join him in the US? Is it possible? I'm the main applicant. No, none of that is possible. The main applicant has to go either with the derivatives or before the derivatives. You can't have a derivative enter the USA before the main applicant when you're starting it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. Your reason is a reasonable reason, but it doesn't matter. It's not going to help. Okay, can't do that. Okay. All right. Last question. This will be your EU 21K 2023 winner. Been to the USA twice, 2013 and 2019 as a tourist. Have a valid B1, B2 until February 23. Filled my DS260 in May, go to the USA and ask again. Right, so all sorts of problems with this plan, right? Firstly, you're not going to be current by February of next year, right? And until you're current, you can't file for adjustment to status. That's first problem. That's gonna be your biggest problem. Second problem, you can't enter the USA on a B1, B2, or most other non-immigrant visas with a plan to adjust status. That causes a problem. And in order to get around that problem, you need to wait some period of time, which is typically thought of as being 60 plus days. 60 to 90 days is ideal. So you wait that time, right? Well, the problem is on a B1, B2, you're not allowed to work. You have to therefore be wealthy enough to actually just sort of pay to stay there for a long time. And there's a period of time that you have in a small window before you actually have to leave the country anyway. But because because of the first reason, it's not going to work. So no, don't do that. Don't even think you can do that. It's not a good plan at all. Given different circumstances, it can work from a B1, B2, but it needs a different set of circumstances than you're talking about. And you're introducing a risk of denial because you entered the USA with a plan to adjust status. Just be patient. Your number's fine. You'll probably be current around about summer of next year. You'll happily go for an interview. Where are you, in Germany? You'll go for an interview next year. And there's no need to mess with that. Why are you going to make things more complicated? Okay. So just stick with that plan. You didn't say Germany. I don't know why I thought Germany, but anyway, you're in the EU. You're fine. Just wait. Okay. All right, everybody. I'll call that a day. Thanks for joining me on today's session. Do me a couple of things as a favor. Number one, make sure you're subscribed so you hear about these videos. Number two, give me a thumbs up like on this video. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't like this video. I don't care. Just interact. And by all means, leave a comment below on the YouTube channel. All of that helps me apparently become more and more famous, which is what I really crave. But anyway, it helps the channel, and by helping the channel, it helps me reach more people, and by me reaching more people, there's more chance that they won't screw up their cases. That's why I want the wider audience. Frankly, it's not to be famous. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.